Namaste, Tashtale, good evening, good morning to all. Welcome back to Venerable Tenzin Legtsok's Tuesday teaching series. Today is part 2 of the topic, Two Truths in Buddhism. A video recording of part 1 is now available on CKSL YouTube. Venerable Tenzin Legtsok needs very little introduction, as Venerable is widely known for his teaching skills. He effortlessly takes students into clear and deep introspection of complex topics within Buddhist philosophy and epistemology. Legtsok is currently in the 17th year of his Geshe studies at Serje Monastic University in Bailakuppe. CKSL Bangalore is very fortunate to have Venerable Tenzin Legtsok as a senior teacher here at the center. Venerable also currently serves as the IMI director at Serje. With that, I invite you to give your full attention to Venerable Legtsok in order to fully benefit from these teachings today.
Thank you, Shandi. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So let's begin. Yeah, so get comfortable wherever you are. I can't see you because we all have our videos off. But yeah, get comfortable in your motivation, in your meditation posture, on your cushion or on your chair, wherever you're seated, and take a minute to draw your attention within. Focus on your breath or on your mind or another object of placement meditation. So take a minute, focus your mind on something, and generate some concentration. And then visualize, if you like, then visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings. Because whatever virtuous action we do on behalf or in order to benefit on behalf of or in order to benefit all sentient beings. So it's good to generate a sense of our interconnectedness with all sentient beings by visualizing them all around us. So usually begin with our father of this life on our immediately right, and our mother of this life to our immediate left. Because it's our kind parents who have given birth to us in this life and then thereby provided us with all the opportunities to do everything we do in this life. So on your right, in addition to your father, then visualize all your male family and friends to your right and behind you. Just briefly bring them to mind and imagine they're seated there to your right and behind you. So we think that we're doing this practice of engaging in a session on the Two Truths together, not only for our own welfare, but for the welfare of all our male family and friends. So it's an auspicious kind of action to imagine they're actually present with you engaging in the session. Right? And then to your left, your mother of this life, and then your grandmothers, aunts, female cousins, female friends, and other relatives. Imagine them to your left and behind you. And think how you're interconnected with them. Think how kind they've been to you as a way of repaying their kindness. And we try to engage in virtuous actions, including this session. And then imagine seated directly in front of you, those whom you're most prone to become angry with, whom you find most antagonistic, because we have to be very cautious not to generate anger towards these people. So imagine them seated about a few meters in front of you, facing towards you. So imagine also we're engaging this session for their benefit. And then imagine all the other sentient beings who don't fall in either category of friend or antagonist. So imagine all the other human beings, animals, and beings of all the 6 realms who have been our kind mother, father, friends from life to life. And all of whom are exactly the same as us and wishing to be free from every form of suffering and dissatisfaction, and who wish to have every happiness up to full enlightenment. So think that whatever virtuous actions I do in this life, and especially this session right now, then I do on behalf of and for the welfare of all sentient beings, without excluding even the tiniest insect. So try to generate the intention that by engaging this session, may it eliminate the causes of suffering and create infinite causes of well-being and happiness for myself and all sentient beings. And if you can, then especially think, in order to benefit all sentient beings, may I quickly achieve the state of full enlightenment, the elimination of all of my negative tendencies and the imprints of those, all my negative karma and afflictive emotions and the imprints of those. And may I perfectly or fully develop every positive quality of both wisdom and compassion, generosity, kindness, patience, enthusiasm, and so forth. In short, every positive quality may I fully develop, thereby becoming a fully enlightened Buddha. And until samsara ends, may I work for the welfare of all sentient beings. So then, if you like, we can go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So as the field of refuge, or object of refuge, we can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us, the height of our forehead, about 1 arm's length distant, about the height of your thumb or smaller. So Shakyamuni Buddha is seated on a golden throne embellished with jewels, supported by 8 white lions. He sits upon a fully open lotus blossom, a sun and moon disk, representing renunciation, wisdom realizing emptiness, and great compassion. Buddha's body is golden hue in color. He wears the robes of a fully ordained monk. He sits in the Vajra, cross-legged posture, full lotus posture, with his right hand resting palm down on his right knee, the tips of the fingers touching the moon disk upon which he sits. In the left hand in his lap, the palm face up, holding the golden baby bowl filled with blissful nectar. He smiles affectionately, looking upon you and all sentient beings seated around you. His hair is blue black in color, each hair tightly pulled to the right. He has a golden Ushnisha or crown protrusion on the top of his head, representing his perfect devotion to his spiritual guides and teachers through countless lives. From every pore of his holy body, light rays radiate out throughout the universe, blessing you and all sentient beings to be free from every cause of suffering, and blessing you and all sentient beings to have every cause of happiness, especially all the realizations in your path of the Buddha. So now I'll share this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha that His Holiness Dalai Lama always usually recites at the beginning of events on my screen. And then we'll recite the mantra Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra 3 times as a way of going for refuge. Compelled by great compassion, in order to dispel all wrong views, you taught the sacred truth. To Gautama Buddha, I pay homage. So imagine from Buddha's holy body, white light rays flow out and pour into you through your crown of your head and to the crown of every sentient being, completely filling your entire body, purifying every suffering and the cause of suffering of the body and mind, and purifying all obscurations of body, speech, and mind. Especially purifying any obstacles that exist within your continuum to realizing, fully realizing Buddha's teaching on the two truths. And then imagine golden light rays flow out from the pores of Buddha's holy body, entering through your crown and through the crown of every sentient being, blessing you and all sentient beings to develop all the realizations on the path to enlightenment, from perfect guru devotion to realizing the precious human rebirth and from death, and so on, up to the state of unification. And especially blessing you and all sentient beings to develop complete realization of the two truths, conventional and ultimate truth. And then imagine Shakyamuni Buddha is very pleased with your meditation. He comes to the crown of your head and abides there in the space above the crown of your head, blessing you to fully engage in this session. Okay, great. So let's. We are going over the two truths for a few sessions. I'm not sure how many. This is our second session. So last session we kind of looked at the reason for studying the two truths and trying to generate an understanding of the two truths. Yeah, so let me come outline again. So basically the main reason for understanding the two truths, it's because as I said last session, it's because of not understanding the true truths that we're stuck in samsara, right? That we're bound in samsara. The fundamental root cause of samsara is ignorance grasping at inherent existence. So ignorance grasping at inherent existence is fundamentally a misunderstanding of the ultimate nature of phenomena. And instead of realizing that phenomena are ultimately void of or empty of inherent existence, we grasp at them as being the very opposite, being inherently existent. Shanti, are you on speaker view, or you see me, or you see something else?
I see you, Venerable.
Oh yeah? Okay. Because when I'm on speaker view, I see you. But that's okay. I'll put on grid view. So yeah. So it's fundamentally due to not understanding the two truths. From beginningless time through countless lives, we have not generated the wisdom, understanding what conventional phenomena are and what ultimate truth, ultimate phenomena are. Rather, we've grasped at all phenomena as being inherently existent. Why that is, I don't know. I can't give an answer. That's just kind of the way things are. But because we haven't generated the wisdom realizing the emptiness of inherent existence, then we continually grasp that inherently existent self, inherently existent other. So we exaggerate, we reify and exaggerate the independence of self from others. And then thereby we generate a very selfish concern, where we're concerned primarily or almost solely with our own happiness, our own welfare. And we think that that exists in not in dependence upon others, but in competition with others. Yeah. So, and we see others as fundamentally something different and separate from, unrelated to us. So thereby we don't see that when we harm others, actually indirectly we're harming ourselves. When we're helping others, indirectly we're helping ourselves. We don't see that at all. Rather, we think, well, if others are acting in a way I don't like, then I'll just harm them, so it'll make them stop, and then that won't have any repercussion for me. It's okay as long as I can protect myself from them, then and I get away with it. Then there's no, I'm fundamentally unrelated to, not dependent upon, and something separate from others. So if I treat others in a way that I wouldn't treat myself, that's okay. We justify that based on this ignorance, not seeing interdependence, but seeing this inherent separateness of ourself and others. So thereby we justify, sexism, racism, every form of bigotry, every form of oppression is justified by this ignorance, not seeing the interdependence of human beings and the interdependence of all phenomena, in short. So it's fundamentally in many different ways, by not understanding the two truths, that we're bound in samsara, and we generate anger, attachment, and greed, jealousy, arrogant pride, all the other afflictive emotions, belligerence, fury, rage, lust. All the other afflictive emotions arise from this fundamental ignorance, grasping at an inherent self, and then based on this selfish, self-centered concern. And thereby we create, negative karma and all kinds of karma. And thereby, when we die, we grasp at this self again, which throws us into a future rebirth. And so, from life to life to life, we keep existing in this way. So now, the Buddha, he had this, having accumulated infinite merit, stories of merit, and practiced wisdom on the Bodhisattva path over countless lives, then he achieved full enlightenment and made strong prayers to be able to come to earth at this time, this degenerate time, when our lifespan is only about 100 years or less, and there's a lot of conflict. And he taught the Dharma, right? So he taught the way to actually explain what is the fundamental cause of suffering and how to eliminate it. So now, due to our merit that we've created through many, many past lives, to be able to meet the Buddha's teachings, and when we meet the Buddha's teachings, to show some interest, and then to actually try to put it into practice to some degree. So we've created incredible positive causes over countless past lives to be in this situation now, where we're born at a time when the Buddha's taught the Dharma. The Dharma still exists. We still have access to Buddhist texts and Buddhist teachers and Buddhist teachings. And actually we have supportive conditions whereby we can actually try to meditate on and put into practice Buddhist teachings. So we're in this incredibly fortunate situation now where we can actually do something probably for the first time, and maybe one of the only times in all the countless rebirths we've taken. This is one of the only times we have a chance to actually bring an end to the process of rebirth, the affliction of through the force of afflictive emotions and karma. So if we don't take advantage of that opportunity now, how incredibly foolish that is, right? And when will that opportunity come to an end? It will come to an end at the time we die, away from this life. Because, who knows what kind of life we're going to have after that? Who knows what our next life will be like? Do we have control over our rebirth? We have about as much control over our rebirth as we have over what we dream each night. Do you have control over what you dream at night? No, almost not at all. No. So just like we can't control what kind of world we experience in our dreams each night, then that's an excellent kind of indicator of what kind of control we'll have over where we take rebirth, right? Because taking rebirth is very much like giving rise to dreams, to a dream. It's similar in that its forces within our mind produce a whole kind of existence. Fortunately for our dreams, I mean, when it's a bad dream, especially, fortunately, it doesn't last very long, and we wake up from it, right? We come back to our normal waking life. But at the time of death, it's a similar process, except there is no waking up, right? Our mind, our stream of consciousness is separated from the body, and then forces within our mind produce a new kind of identity, a new kind of body, a new kind of environment that we're in. And that is, I mean, for as long as the karma to exist in that state lasts, as long as it's not exhausted, that is our reality. There's no waking up from it. The only way to wake up from, or actually finish with that experience, is to die away from it. Just like, there's no telling how long. Now we have the incredible, positive karma to have been born as a human being, to be born in very, kind of peaceful conditions, have some affluence, have some good health, have supportive parents and friends, so forth. Have our sense faculties complete, have met, good people. But how long this situation will last is totally dependent upon our karma. That mostly karma we've created in past lives. So we're totally blind to know when it will end, right? Death could happen at any day, any moment. So it's incredibly important that we take advantage of all the positive opportunities we have in this life, which means the opportunities to transform in a positive way, of which there are many, many different kinds, right? There's many ways to change in a positive direction, but probably the most meaningful in a way is to look for what is the deepest root cause of our problems, and thereby what is the deepest root causes of lasting happiness and well-being. From that, not only for myself, but that's something that's fun. It's universally true for all sentient beings. And what can I do to eliminate the cause of suffering, and create causes of happiness? Because compared to that, all the temporary causes of happiness we create in this life, like making money, surrounding ourselves with, kind people, having good health, all those things are good, and we need those things. We need those supportive conditions. But all those conditions, they will come to an end at the time we die, right? No matter how much wealth we have, no matter how healthy we are, no matter how much we're surrounded by supportive and kind friends and family, we'll be separated from all of that at the time we die. So it's important to use those, whatever wealth we have, whatever health we have, whatever supportive friends and family we have, and whatever access to knowledge and wisdom that we have. It's important to use all those conditions to create tangible, substantial transformation in our own minds, because it's our minds that will go to a future life, right? And it's our minds that will create. It's whatever learning and transformation we create in our own minds that will help us go to a good rebirth, and help us be in a good situation in a future rebirth, such that in a future rebirth we can help others more. We can be of more benefit to others, right? So it's not that, because we know we're going to die, we should totally ignore our friends and family and ignore our health. Not like that, but rather we should really use the good fortune that we have, the fortunate circumstance that we have, to really become a better person as much as we can, and create, accumulate merit, purify obscurations, and create and make prayers, make strong prayers, and learn as much as we can in the circumstances we have, so that in the future life we can be of even more benefit to others than we can in this life. Which also means, we have to create the habit of trying to benefit others, in this life. When we have the opportunity, if we have an opportunity to help others and we don't do that, then we're creating the habit of not helping others, even when the opportunity presents itself, right? So that's totally the opposite to what a Buddha does. A Buddha is someone a fully enlightened being is someone who uses every possible opportunity to have to benefit others. So we need to do that also, but we also have to have discriminating wisdom between what are really the most meaningful ways to benefit others, right? Is it, and with the skills that I have, how can I benefit others most? Anyway, this is all kind of a digression, but it's part of generating a good motivation and understanding why we're studying the two truths. Then it's good to kind of think about the whole big picture of what our situation is, what opportunities it presents. So now I'll just share my screen with you, show the outline that I'm kind of working from. So the two truths. So last week And just now, speaking about the importance of understanding the two truths, we looked at this verse by Nagarjuna. So I think Shanti has posted up again this document online. In the chat, so you can download it if you want to look at in your own time. So now we'll start here from the second point of the first of Roman numeral number 1. We're on B. So I want to talk about first today how the two truths relate to the Four Noble Truths and to refuge. So I already mentioned this last week, but basically it's that by not understanding, let's look at like this first. Think about the four truths. Yeah. If you think about the four truths, right? It's the truth of suffering. Basically, of the four truths, the first are the truth of why we're in samsara, and the second two are the truth of how we can get out of samsara, right? So there's in the four truths, there's two sets. The first two, the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering, are on the afflicted side. It's like, what is the problem that we have? What is the cause of that problem? So basically, what are all the drawbacks, all the suffering we experience by being in samsara, and why are we in that situation, right? So the first is the truth of suffering. So the Buddha said, know the truth of suffering, know all the problems that you experience in the situation that you have, in the life you have, for yourself and also for others. So by seeing all the problems that we experience in this life, it helps generate some renunciation, some wish to be free from those. By seeing all the problems that other sentient beings have in their lives, it helps generate compassion, concern for them, and the wish to help them get out of those problems. And then the second is the cause of the suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the origins. So that's looking at, well, why do we experience all the problems we have? So again, in relation to ourselves, when we look at why we have, what are the deepest root causes for the problems that we have, the karma we've created in the past, and why have we created that karma? Because of distortion in our mind, incorrect ways of thinking, means incorrectly believing concepts, like I spoke about last session a lot, and then on the basis of that, this attachment, anger, and all the other afflictive emotions. So seeing that those states of mind are distortions of reality, that they don't see truth as the way it actually is, then it helps us see that we can eliminate those. That none of those afflicted states of mind are one with the nature of our mind, on the one hand, and they all are in discord with the way things actually exist. So we'll look at this a little bit more later. But in short, though, looking at the Four Noble Truths, the first are the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering, both explain why we're in samsara still. Then the last two, the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, they both explain how to get out of samsara, right? So the truth of cessation is talking about why it's possible to actually totally eliminate samsara. Why? And I mean, the main reason is because the fundamental cause is a wrong concept, is a mistaken way of thinking, is a mistaken way of perceiving things to exist. So because it's a mistaken way of apprehending things, then it can be eliminated, right? By realizing the truth, right? So then, so that's why it's possible to eliminate samsara and the causes of it. So that's explaining the truth of cessation. And then how do we actually do that? How do we bring about that realization, which eliminates our fundamental mistaken idea of the way things exist? It's all explained in the truth of the path, right? So of the Four Noble Truths, the first two explain why we're in samsara, and the second two explain how to get out of samsara. So how does that relate to the two truths? Because the two truths, basically, they have to do with the fundamental ignorance which binds us in samsara. So it's by not understanding the two truths that we create the truth of suffering and the truth of the causes of suffering. It's by correctly understanding the two truths that we know how to bring about, to attain the truth of cessation, and we know how to practice the path. So in short, the practice of the truth of the path is mainly the practice of understanding the two truths correctly, right? Just like if you look at the six perfections that are the main practices of bodhisattvas, right? The practice of generosity, the practice of pure morality, the practice of patience, the practice of enthusiasm, the practice of concentration or meditative concentration, and wisdom. The main one is the practice of wisdom. The other 5 are all supports for that. Why? Because the wisdom realizing emptiness is the thing that actually is an antidote which cuts the root of samsara. It's the thing that actually directly goes against and eliminates the ignorance, the misconception, the wrong view that is the fundamental cause of samsara, right? So just like all the other 5 perfections of generosity, morality, patience, joyous effort, and concentration are supports for the 6th, the wisdom realizing emptiness. All the other teachings of Buddha, in a way, are support for realizing the true truths. You can think like that. Because realizing the true truths, and especially within the true truths, especially ultimate truth. Realizing ultimate truth is the wisdom realizing emptiness. That is the perfection of wisdom. I mean, in short, right? So the whole point of all of Buddha's teachings is to realize ultimate truth. So support for all of that is all the rest of everything else Buddha explained. Another way of saying that, the same thing, is basically you can look at all the Buddhist teachings as divided into method and wisdom, right? Chandrakirti described like the 2 wings of a bird. I'll show you a verse below later on. But like the 2 wings, like a bird with only 1 wing cannot fly, right? So for a bird to fly, it needs 2 wings. So Chandrakirti described this understanding of the true truths, where like conventional truth is like the method side of the path, and ultimate truth is basically like the wisdom side of the path. So only by having these 2 aspects of the path, the method side, which is again like generosity, pure morality, accumulation of merit, purification, practicing patience, loving kindness, compassion. Those are all the method side of the path. On the one hand, we need those. But those without wisdom can never cut the root of samsara. Wisdom is just like, the wisdom realizing emptiness without being supported by compassion, bodhicitta, enthusiasm, patience, concentrated mind, meditative concentration. It also can never cut the root of samsara. To cut the root of samsara and to cross the ocean of samsara, to achieve the state of full enlightenment, we need both working together, right? So we need the 2 truths working together. We need method and wisdom. Okay. So that's what's being, and then what I wanted to especially point out here. So look at this verse. This is a verse from the Ornament of Clear Realization by Maitreya Buddha. Here we are. Let's see, I'll highlight it here. So, it says, the achievings, the truths, the 3 jewels, Buddha, and so forth. It's very succinct. This is typical of the Ornament of Clear Realization. It's got very short, pithy words that, without explanation and commentary, you have no idea what it means. It's very difficult text. But His Holiness Dalai Lama quotes this verse again, these 2 lines, again and again and again. So what is he saying when he quotes these? Is that the achievings here means it's referring to the 2 truths, right? So basically it's saying the 2 truths, and then when it says the truths here, so the achievings is referring to the 2 truths. Then when it says the truths, it's referring to the 4 noble truths. So and then the 3 jewels of refuge, or the 3 rare sublimes, the Buddha, and so forth is Buddha, and so forth refers to the Dharma and Sangha. So what he's saying here is, by understanding the 2 truths correctly, you can understand the 4 noble truths. By understanding the 4 noble truths, you understand what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are. Right? So His Holiness Dalai Lama speaks about this in the context of being a 21st century Buddhist. Right? So we're all in the 21st century. Some of us are Buddhists or some are not, but at least you're all interested in Buddhism if you're here. So usually Dalai Lama presents this like saying like this. He often tells a story about how, in the early days of the Tibetans having come into exile in India, His Holiness would often, go around to tour the refugee settlements and talk to the ordinary Tibetan people, often especially the lay people. And sometimes he would ask them, we're Buddhist, right? So what makes Buddhists different from, Hindus or Christians or Muslims or people who practice other religions? And people will say, well, we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, as opposed to, in other religious traditions, they go for refuge to Allah or, God or Brahma or Ishvara or other things. Right? So, and then His Holiness would ask them, well, what is the Buddha, for example, and what is the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? And people will kind of shrug, like, I'm not really sure. And then he asked, and His Holiness tells, like, remember asking one old lady, well, is Buddha different from God? Or are they the same? And they say, like, no, it's the same. It's basically the same. So, which is not actually the case. I mean, right? The description of what a Buddha is versus the description of what, in the Bible, what God is, or in the Hindu scriptures, what are the qualities of Brahma and Ishvara? It's true, they have a lot in common, with many similarities. But on a fundamental level, like what they are, is something quite different. Like, for example, the Buddha is asserted to have, been an ordinary sentient being like us before, and then through a path of practice, he became an enlightened being. Right? In most other religious traditions, their ultimate object of refuge was never an ordinary being like us. Was, from time immemorial in the past, was always a kind of, more highly realized kind of being. So His Holiness then often points out that in order to really understand what the Buddha and what the Dharma and what the Sangha are, right, and why they're a valid refuge. So why are they a valid refuge? Why is the Buddha a valid teacher, right? So you start with the Buddha. Why is Buddha a valid teacher? And then what he taught, his teachings, the Dharma, why are those valid teachings? So another way to say this, why is Buddha a valid teacher, means because when we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the definition of going for refuge actually is that we have an aversion. So here, I'll show you me again. You'll get bored looking at my Word document for too long. So the definition of refuge actually is that at the very minimum, you have an aversion for, or you recognize the suffering of samsara, right? And at least the suffering of the lower realms. At least at a very minimum, actually, if you just have aversion to the suffering of this life, and for that reason go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it's not really a religious practice. It's not really a spiritual practice at that point. It's just kind of another worldly activity, right? Because most of the ordinary worldly activities we engage in, like trying to, wear comfortable clothes, eat tasty food, live in comfortable places, talk to nice people, listen to nice music. Those are all things we do to try to alleviate, the discomfort of just this life, right? So that's why they're worldly activities. So if we just, have aversion to the suffering of this life for ourselves alone, our own suffering of this life, and for that reason go to refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it's not really a spiritual practice. It's basically another worldly practice. So at the very minimum, we really should have a more expansive view. On one hand, if we're just still limited to our own welfare, at least our own welfare that extends beyond this life, right? So thinking about achieving well-being and happiness, not just in this life, but also in our future lives, recognizing that eventually we're going to die. It's not the case that our stream of consciousness and our whole being comes to an end at death, but there's some kind of future existence. And that we realize if we only create, negative karma and maltreat other people, use this life in a negative way, harmful ways, then we'll suffer in future lives, right? So how do we, and that even if we use our life in a very good way, because we don't have total control of our minds, we don't really have good control over what kind of rebirth we're going to take. And if we take rebirth as an animal, as a hungry ghost, as a hell being, or even as a human being in very bad circumstances, we could suffer a lot in future lives. So at a very minimum, with this wise understanding, recognizing the real danger that we face in future lives, right? And the real suffering we could experience in future lives, and realizing that we need help in trying to avoid that, right? And trying to take a good future rebirth, not only so that we ourselves are comfortable and happy, but so that we can do something to improve not only our own state, I guess, our own welfare in our next life, but that we can also do something to benefit others, right? So just looking at ourselves, the minimum for taking refuge is seeing the potential the potential there is to have much more suffering in future lives, and thereby going for guidance to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. If we expand our motivation beyond just ourselves, then even if we just think about this life, and our concern is really to benefit others, then that becomes a spiritual practice. That becomes religious practice, because that motivation to really use our life to benefit others, even if it's just limited to this life, it goes against selfishness and self-cherishing, right? Or self-centered, the self-centered attitude, and thereby goes against afflictive emotions, and thereby is Dharma, right? It's a spiritual practice, religious practice. So then again, our motivation could be that seeing that we really want to help others and we don't know how, and thereby we go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That's another way, but that's kind of my own interpretation. That's not so clearly written in the presentation of refuge in the ornament of the clear realization. The main presentation is on about thinking about future lives and suffering of samsara. So what I'm saying is, refuge, the definition of refuge is having a wise fear of the suffering of future lives, the suffering of the lower realms, potential suffering in future lives, and the suffering of samsara, and seeing that we don't really know on our own, we're not really sure how to avoid that. We need help. We need a refuge. We need someone to protect us and to help us, to guide us. Therefore, seeing that the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have the ability to protect us from suffering of samsara, suffering of the lower realms, suffering in future lives, we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. But the problem is, if we don't know how the Buddha and Dharma, Sangha, how do they have the power to protect us from suffering of future lives, from suffering of the lower realms, from suffering of samsara? How is it that the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha can protect us from those? So if we don't know that, then our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is just blind faith, right? It's just like, well, we just think they do, because somebody said so, because the Buddha is famous, because the Buddha was enlightened. We can come up with all kinds of other reasons that don't really answer the question, how is it that the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have the power to protect us from suffering, basically, especially suffering of samsara, especially suffering of lower realms? How is it that they have the power to protect us? So if we don't really know how to answer that question, then our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is not stable, because it's not based on wisdom. It's not based on correct understanding. It's kind of like, to give an analogy, it'd be like, think of an ordinary kind of refuge. It'd be like, let's say like a storm shelter. I know there's hurricanes approaching. Actually, I think I've already landed in Texas. But imagine there's like a tsunami approaching Calcutta, Chennai, right? Chennai is hit by a lot of tsunamis. Imagine there's a big tsunami approaching Calcutta, approaching Chennai, and it's going to be so bad, you're sure your house is going to be flooded, and you need to find a shelter on higher ground. And so the government has provided some shelter, has announced that there are these storm shelters, shelter facilities that the public can go to, schools and arenas and so forth, where the public can be sheltered. So then imagine some government official tells you, oh, in order to be protected from the storm, from the tsunami, you can go to this shelter and it will protect you. You'll be safe there. But then imagine you ask the government official, well, why will that be any safer than my house? Why would that shelter be any safer than my house? And then imagine the official says things like, well, it's a new building, or it's very big, or it's a very famous building, or it's a building that's been there a long time, or just because it's a new building doesn't mean it's safer than your house. Just because it's a very big building doesn't mean it's any safer than your house. Just because it's a very famous building doesn't mean it's any safer than your house, right? So in order to know that it will actually provide you refuge, it will actually protect you, that building, you have to know that it's on higher ground, it's a very strong, it's very sturdy and well built. You know, that it's survived many storms before. You know, you have to know these fundamental things about it. If you don't know those things about it, then you're going there for protection is just blind faith. It's just assuming that this government official knows what they're talking about and that I'll be safer there without really knowing why I'll be safer there. So like that, you know, if we go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, as a 21st century Buddhist, as someone with intelligence, human intelligence, so this is the point His Holiness makes again and again and again, we have to use that intelligence. We'd be fools not to use that human intelligence, right? So how do we use our human intelligence with regard to going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? It's by knowing how the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha protect us. We say they have the ability to protect us from the suffering of samsara, suffering of future lives. And also, not only that, but also to show us how to create the causes of future happiness. You know, the happiness of future lives, the happiness of freedom from samsara, the happiness of full enlightenment. But if we don't know how they do that, then our belief that they can do that is just blind faith, right? And so it's not stable. So when things get really tough, there's a danger that we lose faith in the Buddha, you know, in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then we end up totally without a refuge on one hand. I mean, we destroy our connection by that way. We destroy our connection to the Dharma, Sangha. But more importantly, we can become totally cynical, whereby we think that, you know, liberation from samsara is not possible. For me to become even a better person is not possible. For the world to become a better place is not possible. And then you know, it easily leads into, you know, total cynicism and depression, basically, and causes us to just give up on trying to be a better person, right? And lead us into total like pessimism or nihilism, nihilistic view. So it's extremely important to know how the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha have the ability to protect us from samsara. So, okay, I'll take you back to the outline. I think. Okay, there we go. So what it's saying here is, I mean, what His Holiness explained is, well, why is the Buddha a valid teacher, and why does the Buddha have the ability to protect us from the suffering of samsara? Because the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, right? And because the Four Noble Truths show us the reason why we're bound in samsara, as I was just explaining earlier. So it's because the Buddha unmistakably taught the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha has the ability to protect us from samsara. So usually we think, oh, the Buddha has the ability to protect me from samsara. And we kind of think like, you know, not literally, but we kind of have this idea that he will, you know, like, I don't know, it's like invite us into his house and just give us tea and a meal and, you know, close the door, and like he will do everything for us. Or, you know, that he'll some kind of wrap his arms around us or kind of wave his hands and then, you know, cover us with this kind of shield of light, and which through, you know, no bullets can come through, no sickness can come through. So if we pray to Buddha, he'll kind of make this force field around us that, you know, nothing can harm us. But it's not like that. That's not what the Buddha. I mean, the Buddha taught that, you know, Buddhas do not pick sentient beings. They don't pull sentient beings out of samsara like lifting someone out off the ground with their hand, right? They don't lift sentient beings out of samsara by the hand. They don't wash away the afflictions of the mind like washing off mud with water, right? They don't transfer their realizations in their mind into the minds of others. How do they benefit sentient beings? By teaching the truth, right? By teaching the Dharma, which is the truth. So how does the Buddha protect us from the suffering of samsara and future lives? He protects us by teaching us how we cause our own samsara, right? The samsara that we experience. And don't think samsara is like some, it's like some big prison that we're, in a way it's like a prison, but in a way it's not like a prison, right? So it's important to understand both sides of the analogy. So, oftentimes we think of samsara, that it's like a prison in the wrong way, that it's like a place that we're in, and then we can just leave that. Once we get a key, or we get a good escape kind of strategy, and we have a good opportunity, we can just leave that place. It's not like, so how is it different? A prison is different from samsara, is that a prison is a place that it's a building, it's fixed in one place. People come in and they stay for a while and then they go out, right? But our samsara is something, but in the case of a prison, it's a building that's created by someone else. None of usually the prisoners, they didn't build the prison. Like somebody built the prison a long time ago, and then the prisoners did something, they committed some crime, then they got convicted, and then they were sent into the prison. So the prison was already there, and then the prisoners just go in, stay for a while, and leave. Our samsara, it's never not been there. We've always been in samsara from beginning of time. But that's not what I want to emphasize here. Here I want to emphasize that our samsara is something that we created. It's not that somebody else created it. So that's the big difference with the analogy of samsara is like a prison. A prison is something somebody else created, and then the prisoners go there. So sometimes we think of samsara like that. We think like samsara is like this, this bad place where bad stuff happens, and we've just kind of landed up there. We've kind of taken rebirth into this situation, and when we die, eventually we'll just go out, right? Or by some way we can just kind of leave that place. But actually, samsara is something that, it's our personal creation. It's like our body is part of samsara. All the contaminated attitudes, the afflicted states of mind that we have, our anger, our attachment, our ignorance, our selfishness, all even our sense consciousness, the way things appear to them and the way that they don't exist, all of that is part of samsara. So it's like we are samsara. Actually, as a person, we're part of samsara. It's not like samsara is out there and we're just happen to be there. And and it's not that when we eventually get free from samsara, that we go somewhere else, right? As far as I know, like you could be free from someone, here in this session might be free from samsara. It's like you don't look different. There could be people that I meet every day, in the monastery, or when I come to, wherever we go, there could be people we meet that are already free from samsara. We don't know. Definitely people like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, they're definitely free from samsara, but they're showing the aspect of a spiritual teacher, right? And of a person who is significantly different from other people, right? But just because a person is free from samsara, it doesn't mean they show that aspect, Just like Buddhas, when they appear in all different ways. They appear as ordinary sentient beings, they appear as criminals, they appear as animals, they appear as all kinds of things. So we can't really tell. But so how does the Buddha have the Buddha? How does he have the power to protect us from suffering? Is by teaching the causes of samsara and teaching how to get rid of those causes, how to eliminate those causes, right? So that's why the Buddha is a valid teacher. That's why That's why the Buddha has the power to protect us from suffering, because the Buddha realized the truth of what is the cause of suffering, what is the cause of samsara, and he also realized how to eliminate the causes of samsara, right? And the path by which we can do that. So in short, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, right? The truth of suffering, the truth of the causes of suffering, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the path. So, and that's why, because the Buddha, and that is the Buddha's main teaching. That is the Buddha's fundamental teaching. It's the Four Noble Truths. Everything the Buddha taught can be included in the Four Noble Truths. So why are the Four Noble Truths then? That is the Dharma jewel, right? That's the refuge of the teaching. So why is that a valid refuge? Because by understanding that and practicing in accordance with the Dharma, we can free ourselves from samsara, right? That's how, I mean, of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the main thing we go for refuge actually is to the Dharma. Why? Because it's by actually learning the Dharma and putting that advice, putting that teaching into practice, that we can free ourselves from suffering and create the causes of everlasting happiness, right? Causes of liberation and enlightenment. So, so how does the Dharma have the ability to protect us? Because it is an expression of the truth, right? Just like the Buddha is like the doctor, the Dharma is like the medicine, right? So it's by actually learning, understanding, and putting into practice the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma refuge, that we actually are free from samsara. Then why did the Sangha, or how did the Sangha have the ability to protect us from samsara? They're like the nurses, you know, like the doctor gives a prescription, makes a diagnosis, gives a prescription, but we actually have to take the medicine to be cured, or follow the advice of the doctor, the lifestyle changes to be cured. But we need, a physiotherapist, we need a pharmacist, we need a nurse practitioner to help us follow the doctor's advice. Without other conditions, we won't be able to follow the advice, to follow, to take the medicine, or, take the therapy that the doctor prescribed. So the Sangha are like, the physiotherapist, the nurse practitioner, the pharmacist. They help us to practice the Buddha's teaching, right? And that's how they have the ability to protect us from samsara. So that's how the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha each have the ability to protect us from suffering in slightly different ways, right? A good analogy is like the Buddha protects us like a doctor, the Dharma protects us like the medicine or the prescribed remedy, and the Sangha protects us like the nurses or the nurse practitioners. So that's what's expressed in this verse. That and that's why. So So I'm just getting back to the true truths now. So in order to understand why the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha are a valid refuge, we have to understand the four truths. In order to understand the four truths, we have to understand the two truths, right? Because they show us the ultimate cause of samsara. So that's what's being expressed here, is that in order to really generate stable refuge, first, so this is what the Dalai Lama says in summary, in order, especially for someone with a modern outlook, right, with an intellectual, good education, who knows how to, think critically, analyze, that the way they should approach Buddhism is by first studying the true truths. Because the true truths, to gain an understanding of those, doesn't require belief in past and future lives, doesn't require belief in, the Buddha and different deities, and doesn't require religious practices like, saying mantras and visualizing and stuff. It's totally logical, right? It appeals to just pure logic, reasoning. So by understanding the two truths, then, and how we have a fundamental distorted apprehension of the way things exist. There's a fundamental mistake we make about how things exist. By understanding the two truths, we understand the four truths, right? We understand by how, through a misunderstanding of the true truths, we create the causes of suffering. We create suffering and the causes of suffering. By correctly understanding the true truths, how we can achieve cessation of suffering, and that the way to do that is to practice the path, right? So by understanding the two truths, we understand the four truths. By understanding the four truths, we understand why the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha are valid refuge. And then having generated that understanding, then our faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha is unshakable, right? It's very stable. It's very clear because it's based on clear understanding. So His Holiness always emphasizes again and again and again, these days, it's important to be a 21st century Buddhist, which means you have to study. Why do you have to study? To understand the true truths, understand the four truths, and understand why the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are a valid refuge. Right? And that's why His Holiness, emphasizes no matter what age you are, no matter if you're, from a traditional Tibetan culture, or you've adopted, from a traditional Buddhist culture, or you've adopted Buddhism, no matter whether young, middle-aged, or very old, you should put effort into study. I mean, also, as opposed to just practicing some very simple pith instruction, right? I mean, these days, I mean, many people, of course, they just think Buddhism means like just watching the breath and being very calm and nice and not harming other people. I mean, all those things are good, but those things alone will never free you from samsara, right? And I mean, that's kind of like, I mean, in especially in ancient Tibet, there was this idea that you just follow some pith instruction that was given you by your guru, you know, or like there's this idea in the Hindu tradition also that, you know, the guru gives you some mantra, one mantra, and you just recite that mantra again and follow a few basic instructions by your guru. But His Holiness always, on one hand, he always praises Lama Tsongkhapa, founder of the Gelugpa tradition, for always emphasizing that it's important to understand, yes, it's important to practice those pith instructions, but it's important to do so within the context of a broad understanding of all of what the Buddha taught, right? Especially the four truths, the true truths, the three jewels of refuge. Because otherwise, why did the Buddha teach for 40 years? You know, why did the Buddha give, you know, 84,000 teachings? Why, you know, the Buddha's collected works are collected in like over 108 volumes. Why did Shakyamuni Buddha go to so much effort to give all those teachings if it's not important stuff, right? If it's not important to learn what's taught in those teachings, right? If we just practice some pith instruction without a broad understanding of the whole path, one, we're totally missing out on the opportunity we have now to learn about all the Buddha's teachings. But more importantly, we don't really understand why we're doing what we're doing and what result we're aiming for. We just don't really know. We're just kind of going along blindly, right? So, which means, you know, even though we might practice with a lot of, you know, dedication, sincerity, it means that our practice is not really very deep, right? Because we don't really understand the deep causes of the kind of suffering that we want to get rid of. We don't really know why it's possible to get rid of those. And we don't really know exactly how enlightenment and why enlightenment or liberation is possible in the future. So it's like, you know, it's kind of like we're walking and just looking at the ground in front of us without knowing where we came from and where we're going. It's kind of like almost you could think like just keeping our eyes closed and holding on to the, when we have the ability to see, instead of using our eyes and looking around and, you know, being perceptive and seeing where we've come from, where we are now, and where we're headed to. You know, instead of using all the resources available to us, we just, you know, this one person says, just take my hand and I'll tell you where you need to go. And you can just close your eyes, you know, just keep your eyes closed. So it's kind of like that, no? So that's why it's important to understand, I mean, to study. Of course, it's difficult to read all the sutras that the Buddha taught, but we have, you know, generations of Buddhist masters. From, you know, one of the earliest is Nagarjuna, and then Asanga, and later Shantideva, and later, you know, Buddha Palita, Dharmakirti, Chandrakirti, and then later the Tibetan scholars, you know, Longchen Rabjampa, Sakya Pandita, Marpa, Milarepa, and Lama Tsongkhapa, one of the latest Lama Tsongkhapa, and then later ones. But they've all, I mean, they've really done the hard work for us, right? They've looked at the sutras, you know, the Buddha's actual word of the Buddha, and they've condensed the essential meanings in a very easy to understand way for us to, you know, follow. But it still takes, you know, hours and years of study to understand. So that's what is saying here, and that's what His Holiness Dalai Lama emphasizes. Yeah, to be 21st century Buddhist, it's important to understand why the Buddha are a valid, Buddha Dharma Sangha a valid refuge. To know that, you have to understand the four truths. To understand that, you have to understand the true truths. And it's good to start with the true truths because that appeals to logic, simply logic and reason. So that I hope to show you in the next few sessions. Yeah, and also by approaching Buddha's teachings in that way, you get a good broad overview and understanding of the entire Buddhist path, right, and the entirety of Buddhist teachings. So now let's move to the next outline. Why are the two truths important? The third reason is to see how emptiness and existence, or emptiness and dependent arising, are compatible, right? So, because to see how emptiness, things being empty of inherent existence, and things existing are compatible, but those are not contradictory. No, sorry, I'm waving my hands here in front of the camera and you can't see me. So, yeah, another reason it's important to understand the true truths is because it helps us not fall into nihilism. So many times people hear about emptiness and they think it means, well, nothing exists. Or even if things do exist, well, nothing matters. Everything is relative. You know, this is especially very popular view among like Western college kids. I remember when I was in college, people say all the time, you know, at parties, like, and also in class. It's something you can say at parties and in class. Everything's relative. It doesn't really matter if, you know, what does that mean? It kind of means like nothing really matters. If you like it, it's okay, it's good. If you don't like it, that's okay, you're right, it's bad. Everybody's right, nobody's wrong, according to their own opinions. But in a way that means like nothing really matters, right? Because if everybody's opinion is right, then it means there is no truth, right? There's just a bunch of opinions. So, so there's these two kind of wrong views. One is that nihilism, that nothing exists, which is very, you know, that's very extreme. Most people don't have that view. But another view is that, you know, there's no real true or false. Everything's just kind of relative. And so nothing ultimately matters as long as you can, you know, persuade people that you're right, then you're right enough. That's kind of like the Chinese Communist government's way of approaching things, or even, you know, Donald Trump. You know, if you repeat something that's not true enough times and enough people believe it, then that's, you know, that's good enough. So yeah, so this understanding of the true truths shows how, you know, things being empty of inherent existence, things, you know, shunyata, it doesn't mean that nothing exists, and it doesn't mean that nothing matters. Within emptiness and within shunyata, you can have things existing and you can have dependent arising, right? You know, you can have karma, the law of cause and effect. You know, we'll see this when, especially when we look at the consequentialist, middle way consequentialist presentation of ultimate truth, is that, you know, all the other schools, the other Buddhist schools, they all say like, you're crazy. Nothing exists from its own side whatsoever. If that's the case, then you can't explain how karma works, right? So, and you can't explain how liberation and enlightenment is possible. You can't explain how logic and reasoning works. You can't explain, you know, why there are past and future lives. But they're saying that if your understanding of emptiness is too extreme, then the whole, you know, all of Buddha's teachings are annihilated. They're all canceled out. So understanding the true truths helps to show how both understanding the true truths shows how the method and the wisdom side of the path are compatible, right? Things are empty of inherent existence, and yet when I create, you know, if I create a very positive karma, I practice a lot of generosity in this life, that necessarily leads to an effect such that I'm very prosperous and you know, and very prosperous in next life. And how if I go around killing, you know, all the insects in my house, you know, this life, how in next life the same thing happens to me, right? So that's not easy to understand. How is it that there's no, you know, insects don't exist from their own side? You know, when I practice generosity, the person practicing generosity, the things given, the person receiving the things, they don't exist from their own side in the least. When you search for that, you cannot find the person being given. You know, you cannot find the person giving. You cannot find the things given. You cannot find the person receiving. You know, when someone kills another creature, when you search for it, you can't find the killer. You can't find the thing being killed. And yet, within that, you know, the act of generosity leads to prosperity. The act of killing leads to, you know, you being the killer being harmed in the future. How is that? How are those two compatible? It's difficult, right? It's a difficult question. So understanding the two truths shows us how to understand that. The compatibility of the wisdom side of the path and the method side of the path. The compatibility of conventional truth and ultimate truth. Okay, so that's why, yeah, it's important. By understanding the two truths, you understand the root of all suffering. You understand basically why the Buddha are a valid refuge, and you begin to get a broad, you know, overarching understanding of all of the Buddhist teachings by understanding how the two truths are related to the four truths and how those are related to refuge, right? As shown in this verse, the teachings, the truths, the three jewels, Buddha, and so forth. Yeah, that verse actually, again, it's in the first chapter of the Ornament of Clear Realization, and it's right at the beginning of teaching about what to teach bodhisattvas, what bodhisattvas should learn on the path. And then by understanding the two truths, you understand how, you know, conventional truth and ultimate truth, or the method side and the wisdom side of the path, are compatible and not contradictory. So, ooh. You know, I was thinking, I keep looking, I have my watch here next to me. I have my watch sitting on the table here next to me. I keep looking, thinking, oh, we're going to end at 8:30. But we don't end at 8:30, we end at 8. So, yeah, so I better stop here for questions, because we only have like 10 minutes left.
Legtsok, I want to ask one question.
Okay, Fariza, great.
You mentioned that there is the method side, which is compassion, and wisdom, which is shunyata or emptiness. So, so the act of compassion is also empty of inherent existence?
True. Everything's empty of inherent existence.
Even compassion.
Even compassion, yes.
So how do you then... sorry?
Why does that seem uncomfortable for you?
It's not uncomfortable. So the Buddhas also have compassion, right?
Yeah.
So, that's an act of compassion, and the agent is also Buddha, who's who's doing the action of compassion. So in that sense,
yes,
even the Buddha also doesn't exist, is empty of inherent existence.
Exactly. Yes. Also.
So then how does it function?
That's the big question. But well, you know what's helpful? What's helpful here is to think about, because oftentimes, you know, we don't really think about what does inherent existence mean. You know, so it's helpful to think about what would it mean if the Buddha was inherently existent? What would that mean, right? So remember, you know, the opposite of inherent existence. Well, there's two ways. I mean, in one way, the opposite of inherent existence is the lack of inherent existence, right? But if we don't already have a clear idea of what inherent existence is, then the lack of it doesn't mean anything, right? So a better way to think about the opposite of inherent existence is think about interdependent arising, right? So what inherent existence is the opposite of dependent arising, right? So here, if a Buddha was inherently existent, it would mean the Buddha does not have any relationship with anything else other than himself. Let's just think about Shakyamuni Buddha to make it easy, right? There's many different Buddhas and there's all different kinds of things. But just think about the person, the Shakyamuni Buddha. Because then we can relate that to ourselves as a person. So if the Buddha was inherently existent, it means he has no contact with, no interaction with, no relations, no way of relating to anything else. We exist in total isolation from anything. So imagine for yourself, if you existed in that way, then you cannot, you could speak, but other people could not hear you. Other people could give you things, but you could not receive them. You couldn't change at all. Because as soon as you change, then it's like the thing you've changed into, well, let me before I get into change, because that gets a little bit more complicated, but just think, imagine if we inherently existed, that means we do not exist interdependently with anything else. If we're totally without interdependence, then it means we can have no contact with anything else. So it means we cannot take food and water, we can't breathe air, we cannot see things, because as soon as we see things, then the appearance of that to us has changed us. We've become something else. Like, think about this screen we're looking at now. Every moment we see movement on the screen, and we change from being a person who had not seen that movement to a person who has seen that movement, right? And that means we're interdependently arising. Every moment we're becoming something different than we were before, and we're becoming something different independent upon things that are not us, right? When we look at the screen and we see movement, the screen is not me. It's something different from me. But I relate to it by looking at it and it appearing to me and there being movement on the screen. So and I change by virtue of that. When I hear a sound, I've changed from becoming the person who had not heard that sound to a person who has heard that sound, right? So, and likewise, the Buddha, every moment the Buddha is practicing compassion. So, but in order to practice compassion, compassion is a way of relating to other people, right? We have to see suffering. Then we have to have a desire to do something about that suffering. So the Buddha, if the Buddha was inherently existent, then the Buddha could not change, one. And it means the Buddha couldn't, and because he cannot change, then it means he cannot have contact with anything else. Because as soon as we have contact with anything else by seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, or thinking about, as soon as we contact anything that is not us in any way, even by thinking about it, as soon as I think about something, I've changed in that moment from a person who had not had that thought about that thing to a person who has had that thought. And that thinking about something, usually most of the things we think about are not us, I think, right? So the ability even to think about something else than us depends upon there being something else and having some kind of contact with that, right? So if we inherently existent, then it means we're not dependently existent. To be not dependently existent means we cannot have contact. Nothing can affect us, and we cannot affect anything else. So it means we have no relationship with anything else in the world. And it also means we cannot change from moment to moment, right? So, because as soon as we change from one moment to the moment, imagine there's like moment A and then moment B. So in moment A, we exist in one way. If moment A, we change into, something else in moment B, then that moment B, what it is dependent upon what existed in moment A, right? Just like now, what we are in this split second, what we are is dependent upon what we were doing just a few seconds ago, right? So change, for something to have arisen through change, it entails that it is a dependent arising, right? And thereby that it's not inherently existent. So I think, a big problem with, where your question comes from is that, not really thinking clearly about what would inherent existence, what does that mean? What does that entail? So easy way to think about it again is to think that the opposite of inherent existence is interdependently arising, dependent arising or interdependence. or interdependent existence. Those are all synonyms. And so the opposite of interdependently arising, I'm getting my own tongue mixed up. The opposite of dependent arising then is inherent existence. So think about, well, what does dependent arising mean? Things change from moment. Things have contact with other things. People relate to each other. There's cause and effect. There's different parts that combine together to make a whole. You know, our mind interacts with other things in our perception. So then you have to eliminate all of that. There. Okay. You have a follow-up question, Frieza?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what you meant is inherent existence is not an independent existence. It is not. It is dependently arising. That's what you meant to say, isn't it?
That
Inherent
inherent existence.
existence is not a independent existence. It is
No.
not. It is not a permanent phenomena. It is an impermanent phenomena which is dependent. So it changes from moment to moment, right?
No.
No.
Totally not.
I didn't get
No.
it.
No.
Okay.
Inherent existence is like a pig flying through the sky at supersonic speed.
Okay.
Are there pigs flying through the sky at supersonic speed?
No. It's a non-existent kind of.
Totally non-existent. Yeah. Inherent existence is totally non-existent. Does not exist at all. Right? That's what I'm saying. But to understand what that means, we have to look at how things are dependently arising. Everything that exists, you, me, computers, flowers, smells, the Buddha, compassion, all of these things are dependent arising, right? They're interdependently existing. So to be inherently existent would to be not that, right? So inherent existence is impossible because everything exists as a dependent. So I see there's Tenzin had their hand up.
Thank you, Legtsok.
Sure, you're welcome. Good to see you. Tenzin, can you ask your question?
Legtsok, I was asking whether if I would have been inherently existing, then I wouldn't have been born in the first place itself, right?
True. Yeah. Because birth means you, well, I mean, like, we're human beings, right? So we've taken birth from a womb. So womb birth means we've depended on a mother and father. So you depend upon causes, right? If you were inherently existent, you would have to have existed in exactly the way you are from beginningless time without having changed at all. And without having interacted with anything else, right? Are you still there, Satya?
Okay, thank you, Legtsok.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, actually, you have to, inherent, and it's something that if it was inherently existent, it probably could not exist through time, because just to exist in time is changing. I mean, everything is changing all the time. So just to exist from one moment to the next, it seems like it almost entails some kind of change, right? But there, it's important to look at permanent phenomena, right? Because permanent phenomena are not changing moment to moment, right? They exist in a static way. So yeah, looking at permanent phenomena can help us get a little closer to understanding what inherent existence would be like if it existed, right? But even permanent phenomena, they depend upon parts, and also depend upon mental imputation, right? They don't depend upon causes and conditions, but they depend upon mental imputation. But we'll get into that later, right? Next week or the week after. I'm not getting very far each week, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about moving quickly through things. because the pandemic's going to last a long time. Unfortunately, right? So yeah, just to give you a preview of next week. So how to develop an understanding of the true truths is by, in general, let's see, reflecting again and again on the difference between the way things ordinarily appear and how they actually exist, right? So this is your homework. Reflect again and again on the difference between the way things ordinarily appear to you and how they actually exist, right? So you can do this in many, many ways. But just to give you a very simple way that you can kind of maybe practice during the week is think about people that you know, people in your family or friends that you have, and think about how maybe the way when you first met them, sorry, I'll show myself again. Think about this example of people, the way when you first met people, how they seem one way, and then after a few months or years of knowing them, they appear to you completely different, totally different way. Or like even foods you can look at, some foods you maybe tasted the first time and it tastes, maybe disgusting one way, like coffee. I remember the first time, I don't really remember, but I can imagine the first time I drank coffee, I was probably like, yeah, bitter and kind of gross and like, why? But now I love it, So like the way we experience things, it changes, So like the first, say in this instance, this example with food, you taste something once the first time, and you think that the way it tastes comes from the side of the food. That's the way it really is. But later your experience of it changes. With a person the same way. You see or you meet a person one time, and they seem one way, but then a few weeks or months or years later, they seem a completely different way to you. We tend to think that the way the person is out there. It's from the side of the person, and we're just perceiving what is real. But later, the reality changes, and our perception of them changes, and then we kind of realize, oh, maybe the reality is, maybe the way I perceived them the first time is not the way they really are. Maybe the way I tasted the food the first time is not the way it really tastes. It really is something different, right? So try to look at different situations. A very simple example that you can, you will all experience is when you're sitting on a train or a bus and you look out the window to one side and you feel like your bus or your train is moving all of a sudden. And then actually you realize it's not yours, it's the one next to you is moving, right? There's these kind of dissonance between what seems to be real on one hand, but then when we get more experience or we analyze a little deeply and we see that that was not real, there's this difference between the way things appear and the way things exist, right? So that, just getting that kind of basic understanding in many different instances, experiences in our life, helps us to start to get an understanding of the true truths, right? Conventional truth is the way things seem to appear at first. Ultimate truth is what we discover to be actually the way they really are when we investigate, right? So your homework for the week is just to try to think, in your meditation, try to think of different experiences you've had where something seems one way, and then later you learn a little bit more, you get a bit more experience, and you find that actually it didn't exist that way at all. That was kind of an illusion, right? Okay, so sorry I didn't leave more time for questions. I'll try to, maybe Shanti, could you remind me at 7:30 next time?
Yes, Venerable. I have a question from Nivedita.
Hello.
So I've just messaged you the question in the chat box, Venerable.
I can open the chat box too. That's a question. I posted the Venerable. Please ignore the earlier. Please, could you relate the idea of Buddha nature with the two truths? Then, if this question is more apt to a later session, please park it for later. Yeah, the Buddha nature, how do you relate it to the two truths? Well, yeah, it's quite an in-depth question. To fully answer it, it requires quite a bit of explanation. So I will, if you remind me later, Niveta, I will address it again later. But because we're already over time now. But just to make, I mean, to give you a very short answer, the Buddha nature, there's two different aspects of Buddha nature, right? There's a Buddha nature which is an ultimate truth, and there's a Buddha nature which is a conventional truth. So the Buddha nature, which is ultimate truth, is actually a fully enlightened being's emptiness of inherent existence, right? So a Buddha, or a fully enlightened being, so a Buddha, the person, the Buddha, or a Buddha's mind, the omniscient mind of a Buddha, that mind or that person, the Buddha, is empty of inherent existence. So that is their ultimate nature, and that is because that's like the ultimate nature of a Buddha, then it's called Buddha nature. So, and that is an ultimate truth, right? So in short, the ultimate truth, which means the emptiness of inherent existence of a Buddha, or say the ultimate truth of a Buddha, which means their emptiness of inherent existence, is their ultimate nature, and therefore is Buddha nature, right? And then in another way, because we all have the potential to achieve that, then in a way that is our nature. So the conventional, I mean, Buddha nature is more like our potential to achieve full enlightenment, right? Because our minds are not, by their nature, they're not polluted with ignorance or attachment or anger or other afflictive emotions, right? The nature of our mind is merely that which is clear and known. So they're like pure water. And they're not, there are adventitious pollution present in our mind. We have ignorance, we have attachment, we have anger, but those things are all just temporary conditions that we're in. We can eliminate all of those. And our mind has the potential to develop every positive, to eliminate all those afflictive emotions and to develop all the positive emotions and wisdom, compassion, patience, kindness, all positive qualities of our mind. There's the potential to increase those infinitely, right? Because those can be based on wisdom, understanding the truth. So we can increase all of those up to full enlightenment. So that potential to eliminate disturbing states of mind and to increase positive states of mind infinitely is our Buddha nature. And that is a conventional truth, right? So, and that's called the Yegyurik. It's called like, I don't know, how do you translate it? Yegyurik. It's called like, you could say the developmental nature. It's kind of a way to translate it. Ranjanitic. So there's two, I mean, in short, there's two Buddha natures. There's the natural abiding nature, Ranjanitic. Yeah, like the naturally abiding nature, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure the English terms. I'm not so familiar with. Ranjanitic. It's like the naturally abiding Buddha nature, and then the developmental Buddha nature. So the natural abiding Buddha nature is actually, like I said before, it's the Buddha's emptiness of inherent existence. And our mind's emptiness of inherent existence, which is an ultimate truth, is similar to that, right? And that becomes that. Whereas our mind's potential to be free of all obscurations and perfectly develop all positive qualities is the developmental Buddha nature. And that's a conventional truth. Anyway, you remind me and we can come back to it later. But let's dedicate first. Yeah.
Yes,
I'll just make it very short. So think of all the merit we've created together, just discussing, reflecting on the Buddha's teachings, especially the two truths, and rejoice. Look how excellent it is. And rejoice in all the merit created by all of the sentient beings and all enlightened beings. So we pray by the force of this this positive energy, this merit that we've created. By this, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering, especially now. May the global pandemic quickly come to an end, and may all beings who are sick in body or mind everywhere quickly be freed from their ailments. May all have enough food, clothing, shelter, emotional support from friends and family. May violence everywhere in the world be completely quelled. May we be able to reverse global climate destruction and eliminate our dependence upon fossil fuels. May we be able to bring a complete end to pollution of our environment, and together as one human family, create a pure, clean, healthy global environment for human beings and all sentient beings. And may the Buddha Dharma flourish in every, as well as every spiritual teaching which leads beings on a true, valid path to freedom from suffering and to full enlightenment. Especially may all of our teachers have long and stable lives. May Choe Khor Sum Ling and other Dharma centers throughout India, throughout the world, flourish and continue to provide the Buddhist teachings to countless beings. May all beings be able to keep their vows purely and keep pure samaya with their teachers. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thank you all.
Legtsok, thank you very much for your very precious teachings today. And we all look forward to attending part 3 in this series next Tuesday with you. Thank you very much, Venerable.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Legtsok.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind participation, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you. Good night. Good day to everyone.